You have your work cut out for you because seriously, this is like at least 3 or 4 sermons just on one little text.
When is it
How
ever just one?
Bring your fire extinguisher to church on Sunday because the bush is on fire. Okay, here we go. Another episode of The Word Made Fresh. I'm Reverend Jim here with Reverend Mira. Mira, you are in the pulpit on Sunday. Exodus 3. Moses is having one of his iconic Moses moments. First off, how are you feeling about Sunday? And then what is this Exodus 3 story all about?
I'm feeling pretty good about Sunday. I feel like we know this story really, really well. I feel like we talk about it a whole lot. I'm glad I got a chance to do a really deep dive, and I'm genuinely really excited about it.
So this isn't Moses' Ten Commandments. This isn't Moses' Red Sea. This is Moses' burning bush. This is if you track Moses' life, there's like 3 chunks of 40. There's the 40 years where he was, an authoritarian ruler in Egypt, part of the oppressors, and then there was 40 years where he was in the desert as a shepherd. That's where we are now. And then there's the 40 years wandering in the wilderness. So we're kind of at the late end of part 2 of Moses.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, this is probably one of my favorite stories in the whole Bible. I think it's about radical imminence, finding God in the most ordinary places. So Moses, shepherd, looking for a sheep, notices a bush that's on fire and doesn't get consumed by the fire. He goes up to look at it, and that's where this whole encounter happens. What is this moment that Moses has with God at the burning bush?
Well, he asked the part that sticks out to me is first that he's this realization that he's on holy land, sacred land. So he takes his shoes off. What's up with that? Then also this idea of God introducing God's self to Moses. But there's something interesting because we've always understood Judaism to be a monolithic religion. But if Moses is to ask, which name am I, when they ask me which God told you who came, and ask which name instead of what is your name, then that means even under Moses' own understanding that there's a multiplicity of gods. And I think we often miss that when we read scripture and we assume Judaism is a monolithic religion, because there's a difference between there being one God or one God that is above all the other gods.
Yes,
So if you
monotheism versus henotheism. Henotheism being one God above all the gods. The myth of
exactly,
monotheism that we often impose on the Bible.
exactly. And I think the other reason Moses asks as well, I mean, we'll go into the names of God and all of that, but I think the other reason is that in Moses's historical context, there was an understanding that the name of God um, is specific to each tribe or culture or community. So
Hmm.
Moses wanted to know which one is this, which is the
Hmm.
God, which community, because at that point, the ancient Israelites had not become a unified community.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
still, they were a people that spoke a shared language, had shared, what's the word? DNA might not be the right word, but there was a shared understanding of who they were, but they weren't a community at that point.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Both, if you read it as a narrative, I mean, they're slaves in Egypt. They haven't yet gone through this formative moment to become the nation of Israel. Or if you
Exactly.
read it, with a bit of an objective historical lens where it's like, did Exodus really happen? And is this just a myth that was told to help create a unified culture at some future date? Both are valid explorations of the text, but both serve a similar function of they are not a unified people. They would all have their kind of local, tribal God and understanding of God. And so, yeah, when Moses asks, well, who am I supposed to say sent me? And then God's answer feels kind of like sarcastic almost. I am who I am. It's like, wait,
Yeah.
what? Come on, give me a name.
Yeah, and that so then there lies another complexity in this. So the direct translation is Eyer Asher Eyer or something like that. I don't speak Hebrew,
That's pretty
so
good.
so I know I mispronounced that. Um, which actually means a couple of things. First, it doesn't mean I am, because I
Okay.
am would be present tense, would
Oh, okay.
assume a present tense. It's like saying, I, God, like I'm Mira. So then we assume a couple of things. We assume that this is, that the present tense is there, but we can also assume that the future tense is there.
I will
So
be what I will be.
exactly. So it's I am who I am what I am who I'm going to be, or I am who I will be, I am what I will be. So what's
Hmm.
really gorgeous about that is that Moses is recognizing who God is in that moment. And then through the dialogue they have about God's plan for Moses to lead his people out of Egypt, he's also engaging Moses in who God will be, the
Yeah.
liberator to the
Yeah.
ancient Israelites.
Ooh, ooh, because we so often want, to be like, I've got God figured out. Boom. God
Yeah.
is what I understand God to be, not God is what God will continue to reveal and understand God to experience to be. That's a bit more out of my control. I don't know
Mhm.
about you, but I grew up with a religion that was like, here are the questions you're allowed to ask, and here are all the answers to them. We have it all figured out, so you don't need
Yeah.
to ask anymore, as opposed
Exactly.
to can we actually create space for an open and expansive and ever evolving
Yeah.
experience of faith and spirituality, and can God be present in that openness and expansion? I mean, I have a bias to say I sure hope so, but I
Yeah.
feel like you can even find a way into that from what you're saying about this name of God.
It's also a dialogue.
Yeah.
So it's not even so there's an expansiveness. And I love how Richard Rohr will probably call it a dance, like a dance with God. Richard Rohr talks about the Holy Trinity as a divine dance. And I believe we're part of that. So Moses is in a sense like dancing with God, a back and forth exchange, a back and forth dialogue. God says, I need you to do this. And Moses says, but I'm not sure. He's got insecurities. Can he send someone else? And God, they co-create a plan together to get the ancient Israelites out, which I think is so beautiful because we don't then make plans for how a people should be liberated or how the steps of liberation should take place. This is what's going to set us free, so we're going to do step one, step two, step three, step four. We don't do that. God doesn't tell us as if we're puppies, puppets. This is what I need you to do, and this is how it's going to go. God exchanges us in a dialogue, and we do this dance with God and figure out a way forward together. And the power of God is that God ushers us into the best possible solution, the best possible future. So there's that expansive opening that you talk about where everything is possible. And sometimes when we dance with God, we take the lead. But God is always inviting us to more, to the best possibility. And if we say yes, if we say, here I am, instead of depends who's calling, if we say, here I am, God is going to take us there.
Yeah. Or we say, no, 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 that's not my song. I don't want to dance to that one. No, no, get on the
Exactly.
dance floor. We can all find
Yeah.
a place in line for the cha-cha slide or the chicken dance or take your pick. Or
Yeah.
even if you don't know it yet, get out here and feel the rhythm. You might fall in love with something that you didn't know was going to be the groove you needed.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you're like, that is my jam. Maybe that's, I'm going on lots of metaphors. There's lots of music and we all have our jam. So we don't all
Yeah.
have to do the same dance, but we all need to find the one we're called to. We don't
Exactly.
all need to be talking climate, Gaza, Christian
Exactly.
nationalism all the time, but we need people to be in those spaces dancing with God for the liberation in those spaces all the
Exactly.
time. Yeah.
And honestly, who's to say that God didn't appear in a burning bush to somebody else?
Mm.
That's
We just,
not a
yeah.
story that we've read about. Who's
It
to
just didn't
say?
make it into the book.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure God has been speaking and working in and in spite of people that didn't make the cut. I sure hope so.
Exactly. Exactly. Because God could have appeared to someone else and they didn't
Yeah.
say, here I am, or they didn't
Mm.
see what was going, they were too scared and they ran away.
Yeah.
Or I'm too busy to stop and look at this magnificent thing because I have to herd some sheep over there, or I don't know, I'm just not up to it, whatever the long list of excuses are. Moses said, "Here I am." And if he
Yeah.
didn't, somebody else would have.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that relieves us of this pressure that we have to do it, that if we don't, no one else will. God appeared to so many people in so many ways, which is another beautiful thing about this. I love how this is a really obvious way that we see God appear through one of our natural elements. You know, nature, when we talk about is our God omnipotent, where is God? God appears through a natural element, not a statue, not a building, but as a burning bush. And after this, we hear of God appearing as a cloud, God on wheels that the ancient Israelites take with them everywhere. God housed in a building and then in a temple. And when the temple is destroyed, God housed in us. So this is also the beginnings of a community understanding who the divine is, where is the divine present. And this is we get to read about an evolution of that throughout scripture.
Mm. Whew. That's gonna all that in one sermon.
Well,
We'll
no,
see what fits.
that's
That's
my
like a whole
journey,
book.
my
You
life
need
journey.
you might need 700 pages for that whole
Yeah.
idea there. Okay, back earlier, all this is connecting here, but you mentioned, this is the text. Moses goes forward, takes off his sandals, holy ground. Are you going to do that? Are we going to do that? I feel like this could be like a barefoot sermon moment for everybody, or at least if that's not you, that should be the
Well,
message for all ages. That could be a fun way into the text
it's so
too.
funny you mentioned that, Jim. Last Sunday, I took my shoes off at the when I did the message for all ages because I had already been preparing for this text, and Jacob also says, "Here I am."
Yep.
And so when his father calls him, and somehow in that moment the spirit was like, "Take your shoes off."
Mm,
And I thought about how even the Riverside Church doing the work of God is such holy and sacred work. But we are so caught up in the shoes that we wear, as in how we should be in front of each other, how we should present ourselves in front of God. We're caught up in these ways of being that society has impressed upon us, and we box God, and in the same way we box ourselves. So we come into this building, this church, and we say, the church needs to do this, or I need to do this, or this person needs to do that. Our ministers need to do this. And what's beautiful about this moment with Moses is when he takes his shoes off. I'm going to pause that for a second and just tell you about how the practice of taking our shoes off in my culture. We take our shoes off when we go into the temple, this is what my dad did when he went into the Hindu temple, but we also take our shoes off when we go into someone's home. We take our shoes off for practical reasons because we don't want to track dirt into their home, but it's also to show respect for the people who are hosting us. And it's also a sense of vulnerability. I don't know about you, I don't like to show my toes. I'm not a feet person. I like to keep my socks on, keep my shoes on. So when I take them off, there's a vulnerability and a sense of familiarity. I know someone who said that I don't want you taking your shoes in my home because it's too familiar. We don't know each other like that. But when you enter someone's home in my culture, it's like a way of saying, I know you, you know me. There's a familiar building of a relationship and a familiarity. So in the same way, that's how I read this story through those lens. And so when I thought about the place of Riverside doing justice work, that's a holy and sacred work. And so we need to take our shoes off in front of each other. We need to be vulnerable about, as Moses was, these are where my weaknesses lie. And here too, these are where my strengths lie. That takes vulnerability. We need to get familiar with one another, the same way you do when you go into your host's home. You're saying, I want to be familiar with you. I want to build relationship with you. And so does the host. So we take our shoes off. And sometimes our shoes are our insecurities, our issues that we're super passionate about that we think need to be over and above all the other issues. But when you come into God's house, God is saying, take your shoes off, because the issues that matter right now, the assignment that I've set is the one that's more important. And sometimes that assignment has to do with what you're passionate about. More often than none, that's the dialogue that we're coming into with God. Oh, this is God's assignment. How does the thing I'm passionate about dance with God's assignment? And what is that ushering me to do? But before we can even hear God's plan, God's assignment from us, we have to be able to take our baggage off. Take our shoes that constrain us, constrict us, our shoes or clothing or whatever that masks our true identity of who we are. Because Moses said, here I am, not here is the Moses that the world says I am. Here I am. So I know I unfolded a bunch of things there, but yes.
You have your work cut out for you, because seriously, this is like at least 3 or 4 sermons just on one little text.
When is it ever just one?
How are you going to pick? How are you going to choose? What are you going to do between now and Sunday? We're recording this on Wednesday for everybody who's paying attention. So you have days until you're in the pulpit. How are you going to take all of this and then bring it into one moment and experience for us to have on Sunday?
Jim, I don't know. You might need to tell me. But I'll say this. The story talks about a multiplicity of gods.
Yeah.
So I have to address the ways in which this nation has used Christian nationalism to create an us versus them division, where the Christian God is the one and only true God, and the harm that has caused. I have to address that.
Yeah.
And I have to address that God's invitation is into not just the I in the present, but the I, the God that is becoming, that involves a dance with ourselves. And then I will take that into how we at Riverside, we also say, it may not be Christian nationalism in this larger national impact, but at Riverside, we come in with our version of what it is God is supposed to do. And we try to force it on everybody else instead of dancing with our fellow congregants, dancing with one another in fellowship and in community and in dialogue with God to ask, what is it that we are supposed to do now?
Yeah.
What is it we are being called to? Somehow I'm going to say that in 15 minutes.
Somehow, and however you say it, we will find all sorts of ways to hear the word we need, and the word we didn't know we need in the midst of it all. Sometimes that's the beauty of any creative act, is there's this release where it's like, I don't get to control it all anymore, and we'll see how it takes flight or lands or flops into the world.
Exactly.
For all of us involved. And for those who want to really dive in more, that's what we're going to do on Sunday. The day will start at 9:30 with open Bible study. That happens in the building in room MLK 316, and as well as on Zoom. So I'll be leading the class on Zoom. We'll have someone leading the class on site. It's going to be fantastic. That's information on our website. Join us for worship. You'll get to hear what the sermon turns into. And then for those of us online, we'll have virtual coffee hour after worship, where once Mira is done giving hugs and high fives and shaking hands in the back of the nave, she'll join us on virtual coffee hour, and we'll get to really just talk and dive and explore into all of this. Mira, I'm so looking forward to this. I look forward to every time you preach, but I'm glad that this one snuck up as kind of a slightly late addition into your preaching schedule. But I'm grateful that it landed in front of you and that you will be stepping into the pulpit, shoes or no shoes, this Sunday.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. And make sure you let your online folks know that they can also take their shoes off.
Oh, yeah. No shoes are required for church this Sunday. Keep your shoes at the door, everybody. Take them off. You're on holy ground. It's going to be great. All right. We'll see you all on Sunday. Can't wait to hear how it all goes. Bye, everybody.